We're in Proverbs in a series right now. We have today and next Sunday, and we'll wrap up this series called Living Wisely. And we've been talking about, first of all, how we get wisdom, the way that God provides us wisdom by asking Him, by listening to wise people that He puts in our lives, and then by our own life's experiences. We learn from the things that we've done and experienced, and hopefully we learn from our mistakes not to do those things again, and then the responsibility to pass that wisdom on. Last Sunday we talked about wisdom in our friendships. My goodness, if you were not here, let me encourage you to go back and listen, watch. You can go on our website, go to YouTube there and watch the message, listen to the message. Not because anything I said was so great, but the wisdom that comes from the book of Proverbs is something all of us can use. And I'm learning so much myself. Next Sunday, Bernie's going to be up here. Bernie's going to be teaching about wisdom in our finances. So I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if that would help you, but both of my hands are raised. All right, wisdom in your finances next Sunday. Most people, today we're talking about family. Most people, for most of our lives, the closest relationships that we have are within our families, are they not? They really are. I mean, it starts with the day we're born for most of us. And for me, with the exception of less than 2 of my 62 years, I have lived with my family. I grew up with 4 siblings, mom and dad. Look at this picture and see, look at Andy way down in the corner. He's always looked like that, kind of a little bit deer in the headlights there, you know. Yeah, that's what I say. Wow. That was 1970, and so he was just like 4 years old when that was taken. And I'm the handsome guy up on the top on the left-hand side. 7 of us in the family sharing the same houses, some of which only had 1 bathroom. It was amazing. Next month on June 18th, 41 years ago, after graduating from college, I moved from my parents' home to sharing a new home with my bride. And that was us about that. Isn't she pretty? She had to be. She hasn't changed. Thank you. If I got some of those aviator sunglasses, would that make a difference? All right. And we went from an old family, our old families, to starting a new family, and 41 years later, our family has grown, and I don't even know how many of us there are, but there's a bunch, and we're so grateful for that. It's within family that we learn more about life than any other circle of relationships, isn't it? We learn from one another, because it starts out from our beginning. I don't know when my mom started teaching me, but I know it must have been very, very early. It's in family that we learn things like how to cooperate with one another. I mean, when you're 7 people in one house with 1 bathroom, there has to be this level of cooperation. You learn how to cooperate. You learn how to obey. You learn how to share responsibilities. You learn how to work. You learn how to be disciplined and get some discipline in your life. You learn how to love, and hopefully you'll learn how to be loved and where to find support. And that's because family matters. Perhaps more than any other social networks that we could be involved in, family matters most. It's the foundation for every healthy, thriving culture. And within cultures, and I think this is reflective right now of our culture, within cultures where families are being torn down rather than built up, the result is a crumbling culture and society. We see it clearly here in America, as families are being replaced with gangs and cartels. What happened to family? God created us, we said last Sunday, to be social beings. So for Adam, He created a wife, Eve, and in doing so, He also at the same time created the first marriage. He created the first family when He brought those 2 together. And guess what? Here they are, living in the perfect Garden of Eden, with perfect surroundings and no worries. But soon they discovered very early on that it wasn't easy to always get along. Because once they sinned, Genesis chapter 3, they became 2 imperfect beings, 2 imperfect people, and 2 imperfect people And everybody in this room, when I'm talking right now about husbands and wives, everybody in this room is married to an imperfect person. Would you say amen? Some of you guys didn't say a word. All right, now. We can't, because they're two imperfect people, our marriage won't be perfect. Neither will be our families. Imperfect children were born to you. Now, I know some of you grandmas are going to disagree with me and say, let me show you a picture of my grandbabies. They are perfect. Liar. All right, now. And imperfect children, Adam and Eve, are the great first example. Imperfect children learned what it was like in their family to experience rebellion and heartache and loss, didn't they? And it's because of our imperfection that's brought about by our sinful nature that we all possess. It's because of that imperfection that all of us need wisdom. Everybody in this room, from the youngest to the oldest, we all need wisdom, and wisdom within our family units. It's the fact that perhaps no pain is greater than pain inflicted within the family. Isn't that true? I mean, no hurt hurts more than when it's hurt from within the family. And it's because of that we need wisdom in our family relationships. We did a survey here this morning. If we could do that, we're not going to, but if we did a survey here this morning, all of us could tell stories of pain and dysfunction, even trauma, that you deal with from family. I took a class several years ago for my role as a chaplain with the fire department and police department, and it had to do with alcoholism and the effect that it has upon the public safety community, and it has a great effect upon them, by the way. And found out that most alcoholics, most people who are addicted to alcohol, that addiction begins with some sort of trauma that takes place. Maybe it was a loss of a parent when they were a teenager. Maybe a divorce. That's a huge starting point for alcoholism. But some kind of trauma that takes place. And because of those traumas, we understand how much we need wisdom and that trauma that you deal with as a family. And some of the foolish things that we do, through those things in family, we have to love those people that we love the most. Solomon, who wrote many of the Proverbs, was the child of King David and his illicitly gained wife Bathsheba. Can I say it that way? That was Solomon's mom and dad, David and Bathsheba. Now, if you know the stories of David and his whole life, and you know, of course, the very famous story of David and Bathsheba and how she became his wife, you know then that there was not a lot of wisdom in the palace where Solomon grew up. Just wasn't. So when God said to David, and we read this passage last week, when God said to David, to Solomon, what do you want as king? He was a new king. David, his father had died. He inherited the throne. What is it? What's the number one thing that you want? Solomon asked for wisdom. And God gave it to him. And much of that he shares in this book, and much of what he shares in this book comes from things that Solomon observed and noticed and watched in his life. That's what these Proverbs are. These are things that he has seen, and so he wrote those things down. Much of it is just very simply old-fashioned common sense. Last week we took a look at the friendships. Next week, finances. But we could use some help here today, I'll bet, with families, can't we? Sure we can. So today it's about family. Unfortunately, the Proverbs have a good bit for us to say here. I found some prominent themes in the book of Proverbs. Let me tell you, I wrestled all week long with getting this message ready because there is so much stuff in there to deal with families. And I'm trying to say, God, I can't do it all in one 35, 40-minute sermon, so help me kind of whittle it down. And so hopefully I'll do that for us this morning. Number one, our roles in family are different but complementary. Complementary. You mean complementary? It's not complimentary in that we give compliments. Oh, you look so nice today, sweetheart. And that's an important part of being family, isn't it? Say amen, guys. Some of you get it. All right, over here they don't understand so much. I'll be talking to you guys a lot today. It means complementary in the sense of supportive. Our roles are supportive. God gave Eve to Adam to be his helpmeet, his support. Because, frankly, fellas, we know more than anybody else, we need support, don't we, ladies? Now, it's supportive, different roles, but complementary. They lived in an agricultural economy here in Solomon's days, and most Israeli families' income came from farming or herding. And in most families where there was both husband and wife, the husband was out all day laboring in the fields or in the pastures, and the wife was home working. And if she was able, she was a good investor of the family finances. In fact, one of the great passages in Proverbs is the very last chapter, Proverbs 31, which speaks about the virtuous woman. Who can find her? She's a great thing to have. And it talks about the wife there in Proverbs 31, buying and selling property, about the wife using her skills to create goods to sell. And it tells us that she was a shrewd businesswoman in the community. That's great in an ideal world. And here on the Outer Banks, those of you who are guests, you may think that we live in an ideal world, but we do not in many regards. But it's great if a family can live on the husband's income alone. But for most of us, I would say that's probably not reality. And Proverbs gives us a great example that a wise marriage is a partnership. Wise marriage is a partnership. That means we're working together. We both have investment in this thing called marriage. Those of us who are married, doesn't necessarily mean that we work together in the same occupation. Most of the time, I would not advise that. We need a little bit of time to be away from each other. I was talking with somebody recently whose husband recently retired, and she finally said to him, "You got to go get a job. You got to get out of the house." Doesn't mean we necessarily work together in the same occupation, but partnership means that together we assume responsibility for the family's needs. All right? Partnership in marriage. Then the next point I have for you is parents are parents. And I know what some of you are thinking. Boy, that's about the dumbest thing I ever heard. The point that I want to make, and you can add this to your point in your notes, is parents are parents and the children are not. Oh, now I get a lot of nods. Okay. Amen. I got a lot of parents are parents and the children are not. In a family with godly wisdom, hear me now, mom and dad are in charge. They determine, mom and dad, determine the direction for the family. Famous verse that you know, Proverbs 22:6. Direct your children onto the right path, and when they're older, they will not leave it. They need our direction. Parents use wisdom with each child, and those of us who have children, more than one, I'm looking at some right here, there's like 10 kids between these two couples right here. Would you agree with me that all 10 of your children are all different? And it's our responsibility as parents to learn those differences, because that's how God He creates us all different personalities and so forth. It's our responsibility as parents to learn those differences, get to know them and their strengths and weaknesses, and guide them, direct them in how to use their strengths and their weaknesses successfully. Parents guide their children because here's why God says, parents, you guide the children, not children guide the parents. And really, again, this isn't rocket science, it's common sense. We guide the children because we've already been down some roads ourselves, have we not? We've been where they're going. The homes where the parents are not in charge. I've said this before, but the great place to go and just observe and watch this is in the toy department at Walmart. The homes where the parents are not in charge or they're uninvolved tend to be disasters. You talk to school teachers and ask them, is there a difference between the kids in your class whose parents help them with their homework, not do their homework for them? You're not doing them any favors then. who help them with their homework, and who read to them regularly. Do you see a difference between those kids and the parents who seem to be totally uninvolved? And the teachers will tell you absolutely. Huge difference. If you have small children in the home, let me just, as someone who has had small children in the home, let me just say to you, it's never too early to begin to instill in them the character you hope for them to have as adults. Never too early. And you know where that starts, Mom and Dad? Let's just get real for a moment. That starts with our example. It starts with our example. Let's show them character by our lives. Wise parents teach their children discipline. Discipline. Proverbs 22 verse 15 calls it the rod of discipline. It says it will drive foolishness far from them. Others have said, paraphrased it to say you apply the board of education to the seat of learning. I understand that. I understand that very, very well. At our house, my kids growing up, it was called the spoon. We had a wooden spoon in the kitchen. And sometimes all it took was, do I need to go get the spoon? And suddenly my foolish children became wise. And my disobedient children became obedient. My unpleasant children put smiles in their faces. I used to tell my kids that the reason for being disciplined then was because, and I did tell them this, and they can tell you they heard this from me, because if they made it to adulthood and did not learn discipline as a child, and they continued to be undisciplined as adults, somebody else is going to then discipline you. And it's not going to be any fun. Better to learn obedience and discipline when you're young and then to have to avoid it later. Now, children, that's parents kind of in the family. Children learn both to contribute and to learn. Again, children have contributions to make in the family, but they're not in charge. And those homes where the kids seem to control everything, they have things upside down. Well, how do kids contribute? What can kids do to contribute to the family? And I'm not talking about child labor and those kind of, how can children contribute to the family? Wise parents dole out appropriate responsibilities in the home. We start teaching. Toddlers are not too young to learn to start putting their toys away. What are you doing when you say, now put your toys away? You're teaching them responsibility. You're teaching them to contribute. We called them chores when I grew up. And those things teach our children to become productive adults and team players. And that's so important that we learn how to play as a team and family, because that's what a family is. Some of us have been in homes where there was cooperation between husband and wife, between children and parents. And you were blessed to grow up that way because it carried you on through your families and your relationships at work and with your neighbors and so forth. But it's in those homes where cooperation was missing that there was and there is dysfunction and turmoil. So, next point says a wise family learns to function together for the family's good. For the family's good. And of course, one of the lessons that comes in that for the family's good is to teach our children not to be selfish. And that's a challenge, is it not? Because all of us are born, again, imperfect with this sin nature, and part of that sin nature that all of us has is selfishness. I want for me. I want to do what pleases me, what makes me happy. So we teach our kids to function together for the family's good. Point number 2, husbands and wives have to trust and respect each other and keep their relationship and commitment pure. If a marriage is not built on trust, and trust meaning believing those vows that we said when we became husband and wife, remember we said those things? If a marriage is not built on trust, it has a faulty foundation. It's cracked. It's going to crumble. And like respect and honor, trust is something that is earned. And that's a big reason that trust starts being built well before the wedding day. In the dating relationship, if there is no respect, if there is no trust, If in the dating relationship there is no commitment to moral purity, here's what you can expect in the marriage. None of those things. Can I say that again? If there is no respect, if there is no commitment to moral purity, if there is no trust, before you get married in the dating relationship, don't expect those things to pop up suddenly when you're married, because they will not be there. The key to trust is to avoid situations when trust could be doubted. That's not hard to figure out. Hold one another accountable. Be transparent with each other. And again, because none of us is perfect in a marriage relationship, it doesn't help to point fingers. Both of you working together on your marriage, and it might be the hardest work you've ever done, both of you working together on your marriage will bring the greatest benefits you've ever experienced. And by the way, marriage is a work in progress, is it not? I mean, next month, 41 years for Gail and I, and she still has me working on it. Because I need to work on it. We need to work together. Respect in marriage, trust, and purity. Husbands, here's, the Bible talks a lot to the men in the Proverbs. In fact, as we saw the first Sunday, a lot of the Proverbs are Solomon talking to his son. My son. And he talks a lot about men because he knows men more than he knows anything else. Most of what is said to husbands in the Proverbs, get this guys, is about faithfulness. It's kind of like there's not a whole lot. He talks about hard work a little bit, but most of it is about faithfulness in our marriages. There must be a good reason for that, would you not think? Why would he spend so much time with that? Chapters 2, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, they all say so much about being faithful men and about the ruin that unfaithfulness, adultery, brings to your life and the lives of your family. So let me just say this. There is no godly reason, no wise reason, men, for cheating on your spouse, no matter what they have done or haven't done. Can I say that again? Do I need to? I don't think so. No godly reason for adultery. So husbands, for example, in chapter 5, verses 15 and 20, one of the things that Solomon says in that passage to the men, he says, hey guys, enjoy marriage. All right? Enjoy your marriage. He says, be satisfied with the wife you married and don't look elsewhere. Ladies, you'll like this. Solomon says in that same passage, he uses this phrase. Let me just kind of poetic. But ladies especially will like that. He says, be lost in her love forever. You like that, girls? Be lost in her love forever. That's one place, guys, where it's okay to be lost and not have to ask directions. Be lost in her love forever. Wives, what's he say to wives? Wives, in Solomon's day, and I think today, the tendency is not as strong amongst women as men to be unfaithful. So much of the Proverbs is directed to you about being things like be sensible. Chapter 19, verse 14. Be capable. Chapter 31, verse 10. Be a woman of character who can be trusted. A wife is, one of the Proverbs says this, and I remember hearing this ever since I was a kid. He who finds a wife finds a good thing. Ladies, you're a good thing. Your wives, husbands, treat her like she's a good thing. Found a good thing, and it says in chapter 18, verse 22, your wife, fellas, your wife is a gift from the Lord. You're not God's gift to women. She's God's gift to you. Chapter 6, wives are told not to make their husbands jealous because it says jealousy is the rage of man. You want to see your husband go off? Do something to make him jealous. And I've seen and heard of women, I'll teach him a thing or two. And they do something to make him jealous. Not a wise move, ladies. And while it warns women against cheating on their husbands in chapter 7. If you read chapter 7, there's a man and a woman in that story where he relates this story that he saw. She was married. There are 3 places that I found in the book of Proverbs. Now, please understand, I did not write the Bible. Do you get that? I take no credit for what... But there are 3 places, 2 in 1 chapter, that encourage wives, don't be a nagger. Don't nag. Husbands are biting their lips right now. Don't. And here's one of my favorites. Chapter 27, verse 15 of the 3. An endless dripping on a rainy day and a nagging wife are alike. Now, let me just say something, ladies. If you take offense to that, we can tell what your problem is. Drip, drip, drip. Oh, I get so frustrated with him. You say, he just doesn't get this done or that done, then okay. Be patient. Be loving. So what does a wise woman look like? At the end of Proverbs, is an entire chapter devoted to the virtuous woman. And it is packed with wisdom for you ladies. Lots, and not just married ladies, single ladies as well, but lots about being respected, about being honored, about working hard, about being a capable businesswoman. And at the end of the chapter, we're told this. Ladies, please get this. Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord will be praised. Wisdom, what does that mean? Wisdom says, your greatest beauty, girls, ladies, your greatest beauty, the most beautiful thing about you should not be the physical. Even though you are outwardly beautiful, your greatest beauty should be your relationship with the Lord. And when people see that in you, they will praise you for that. And let me say one more thing to that point. Moms, teach that to your daughters. Because everything in the world screams at them about their physical appearance. Teach that to your daughters. Number 3, we've talked about husbands and wives. How about children? Children gain wisdom through obedience and respect, the Proverbs tell us. Now, parents are not perfect, and I've said that several times, but God has set up the home to be a place where parents are listened to, respected, and obeyed. If you could write one thing that's not in your notes and just make it in big capital letters, children need to listen. Over and over and over and over in the Proverbs, it says, listen, son. Listen to what I'm saying to you. They need to listen. Listen to these verses. I'll just give a whole bunch of them here, machine gun style. Child, a wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son, heartache to his mother. Listen to your father who gave you life, and don't despise your mother when she is old. You think there's some things in Proverbs about male children respecting mom? By the way, where do our boys, where do our sons learn to respect their wives? Somebody tell me, where is that picked up? In how we, husbands, we treat our wives. If we treat them with respect, our sons will as well. But I'll never forget, I was 12 years old and I was already taller than my 5-foot-tall mom. And I said something smart back to her. That was my big issue in life, was being a smart aleck. Can you imagine? And I said something, and my mom came at me with a belt. You know, my mom's this big. And she came at me with a belt, and she chased me around the table with the belt, and finally she went to swing it at me, and I snatched it and grabbed it from her. We both chuckled at that. You know, it was kind of like the first time that ever happened. He's now feeling his oats, you know. Dad came home. And apparently Mom said, "You'll never guess what happened today with Ricky." And she told him, and my dad pulled me aside, and he said, "I just want you to know, if you ever lay a hand on your mother, my dad was at the time, gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. If you ever lay a hand on your mother, He said, I will knock you across the room. Some of you guys are told the same thing, right? My dad was saying, and I never saw my dad harm my mother in any way, but he was saying, son, you respect this woman. I think that was the last time she chased me with a belt, though. Right now, my son, chapter 6, verse 20. My son, keep your father's command and don't reject your mother's teaching. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction and don't reject your mother's teaching, for they will be a garland of grace on your head and a gold chain around your neck. Chapter 3, verse 12 says, for the Lord disciplines the one he loves, just as a father, the son he delights in. 15:20, a wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish one despises his mother. That the greatest tool in rearing children, to be wise adults one day, and that's our goal as parents, is we want to see our kids become wise. We want to see them become people of character, integrity, productive in their lives. The greatest tool is our own example as parents. Proverbs 23:26. Read that with me. Will you read it? My son, give me your heart and let your eyes observe my ways. This father's saying, watch how I live. Watch me. Do what I do. So let me wrap up this morning with this last point. Make wisdom your family's foundation. You have to build your home on a foundation, a biblical foundation that includes wisdom. And if we could look at every successful marriage and ask the couple, how did you do it? And I'd encourage you younger couples, don't wait till you kind of get into this situation in your marriage where things are getting painful and things are not. Invite them over for dinner. Invite an older couple that have been doing it for years and years and appear to be successful, and just pick their brains. Tell me some things about how your marriage has lasted as it has. We'd hear some wisdom if we would do that. I've heard of divorces being the result of unfaithfulness, the result of finances. By the way, the number one cause of divorce in America is finances. Selfishness, addiction, abuse, laziness. I've heard of separations, divorces because of all those things, but I don't think I've ever heard of a marriage ending because the couple made wise choices together. Why are y'all splitting up? Well, we made this great decision together and about doing this or about doing that, and it was wonderful, so we're splitting up. That just doesn't make sense, does it? For those of you not yet married, can I use that word yet? It's something that you need to formulate and commit to now. If there's a prospect that one day you will marry, let me ask you a question, especially you younger folks who are in here. And let me ask it to the older folks who are in here too that may be single. Why in the world would you marry someone whose values are not the same as yours? If the values are not the same, how are you going to handle your finances? How will you teach your children love and discipline and respect? How will you teach them to love the Lord, love the Word of God? As parents, there is no guarantee that our children will make us proud because they became successful. But please hear me, without instilling wisdom in them, as the dad in Proverbs does, their chances of being wise as adults is greatly diminished. So, this morning, I don't know how many families are represented in this room, probably 100 or more. Is wisdom guiding your choices? How's your family? Is wisdom guiding your decisions, your next move? Is wisdom guiding your children? Let me say to you, if not, can be. Remember that 2 weeks ago, we went to James, and James says, if any man lacks wisdom, let him do what? Ask God for it. He gives it freely if we ask him, and James says if we believe that he will. It takes faith as well. And there may be somebody in this room right now, I don't know. We have so many faces that I have not seen before, but there may be somebody in this room today whose marriage might be on the brink of separation. Listen to me, you need wisdom before you make that kind of a decision. You might be the parent of a newborn, or a parent of young children, or a parent of kids entering their teens, or a parent of a teenager getting ready to finish school and trying to figure out this big wide world and what's next for me. You need wisdom. You might be considering a move yourself or career change. Wisdom is available to you. So let me ask you this morning, what is your next step regarding wisdom and regarding family? What is your next step? Where do you need to go next? I'd love for you right now to take out a Connect card and on it write out your next step. Here's my next step regarding your family and how wisdom will make a difference. And tear that off and put your name on it if you would, so we can pray for you. If it's just something so personal, you say, I don't want anybody to know who I am. Can I do this anonymously? Of course. But we'll pray for you anonymously. But hand that to one of our pastors who will be here at the end of our gathering, or put it in one of the black boxes there by the doors. Just drop it in the slot. But we'd love to talk with you about wisdom. Please don't make a life-altering decision without consulting wisdom. Please don't. Would you bow with me in prayer? Our Heavenly Father, all of us have connections with family, I guess. It's the rare person, perhaps, that does not. And if there's any area in our lives where we need your wisdom, I would say it's got to be within family, between husbands and wives and parents and children and brothers and sisters and moms and dads, and we need wisdom. And thank you that your word hasn't left us clueless. You've given us a lot of great suggestions, a lot of truth, a lot of common sense. Help us to learn it, to seek it out, to apply it. Help those of us who maybe are a little bit older in our relationships and family, with our children, with our spouses, to be willing to freely share the things that we've learned. We've got so much, Father, right here in this room to pass around to help those who might be struggling in this area. So I pray, God, that you'd help us to be truly this family of God. If there's someone here today, Lord, that their life is crumbling and falling apart, maybe the foundation is not wisdom as it should be in whatever area of their life it might be, I would pray that today might be the first day that all that begins to change because they come to you. So teach us wisdom. Make it a part of our lives. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.